idiocy saturation. Online, people who don't think before they post are able to post more often than people who do. As a result, the average social media post is stupider than the average social media user. Worth remembering whenever Twitter dumbassery drives you to despair.
Yeah. So by Twitter dumbassery, what I mean is if you just go onto Twitter and unfiltered and you're not you don't have a curated feed and you just look at the posts, it makes you want to blow your brains out just because there's just so much garbage. It's just an avalanche of garbage. And it kind of like when I first went onto Twitter, I got a really low opinion of humanity because I was fooled into believing that this was reflective of what humans actually think. But it actually took me a bit of time to realize that the stuff that you see on social media is overwhelmingly, it consists of stuff that people have posted hastily without thought. Because the people who really think about what they're posting, they take a lot longer to post. And so naturally, it's going to be filled with stuff like, oh, I'm tired, lol, I'm going to go to bed, lol, and stuff like just meaningless nonsense like that is going to be the stuff that makes the majority of social media posts. And I think this is why it's so important to curate your feed, because I always say that a social media feed is the worst possible source of information you can have, but a well-curated social media feed is amongst the very best sources of information you can have. It makes such a difference. It's the difference between hell and heaven. And a large part of that really consists of filtering out people who don't think before they post, people who just give in to their worst impulses and just follow their whims rather than actually following their logic and their rationality.
What was that insight you had around how famous people will tweet some half-baked idea whilst they're sat on the toilet that will then be studied by the entire world for the next 3 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, this was kind of like a guess, but I think that this is true. I suspect it's true. I think what's happened is that people have a tendency to over-interpret information online. So they'll read into information a lot more than was intended. And I mean, I call this the politicization of babble, basically. I think that's what it actually is a lot of people because they don't think before they post, they're just making a comment about something that just off the top of their head. It's just something that's come very sort of, quickly to their mind. And it's something that they just vomit out. They don't really think about it. And then what happens is you get people on the other side of the world who will see that and they will assume that this is a hill that the person's willing to die on, something that they've spent their entire life thinking about. And they will scrutinize it and dissect it and evaluate it and write essays on it. And I've seen this happen a lot, nowadays you get whole news articles written about one tweet. If some famous person like Elon Musk, if he just farts out a tweet, then you'll get like a BBC journalist will basically just lock onto that tweet and then they'll just write a whole piece about it and they'll just completely scrutinize it as though they could sort of give a psychological profile based on this one tweet,
Yeah.
And I think that's very dangerous because most people don't think very much before they tweet. It's just a whim. It's like when you go and meet somebody and you have a cocktail party and then they just start talking. They're not really thinking. They're just trying to make conversation. So they'll just say stuff that they don't even mean half the time. And I think this is something that people need to realize is that when people say things, it doesn't necessarily mean that they mean what they're saying. Sometimes people they're just sort of experimenting, they're just kind of throwing out ideas out there just to see what people think of it. And to be honest, I do that as well. I don't actually firmly believe a lot of the stuff that I tweet out. I just tweet it out just to see how people react. And, then I can maybe sort of calibrate what I'm thinking based on that. So yeah, we shouldn't take what people tweet out or what they post seriously online most of the time, because they might feel differently 5 minutes after. In fact, I do that all the time. I'll tweet something and then I'll just 5 minutes after I've tweeted it, I've got a completely different opinion. And I'm like, actually, what I just tweeted was a load of shit, So I think people need to bear that in mind. Scott Adams actually had a really good idea where he calls it the 48-hour rule, where he says that we should never judge what a person has posted until 48 hours have passed and we've given that person a chance to retract what they've said. Obviously, this is not feasible. It's not something that you could actually do in real life because, you can't wait 48 hours after every opinion. But I like the idea behind it because I think a lot of what people say is essentially it's kind of like just a untamed frisson of some sensation that they've had in their mind, something that's just kind of triggered them to just say something. And they haven't domesticated it. They haven't really, tamed it. So it's just a wild idea that's just kind of run rampant in their head, and they've just decided to just, let it out of the cage.
This is facilitated by the frictionlessness of social media. Previously, if you wanted to use the Gutenberg printing press to actually get something down onto paper, you would make sure that you'd spent some time thinking about what you were going to get this one very, very small slot that you had to be able to produce your incredibly important pamphlet or whatever you're talking about. But you're right, that the frictionlessness allows brain to mouth or brain to fingertips to be instantaneous. This is something that I realized around the Jordan Peterson Sports Illustrated girl furor. Was it last year, I think? And I love Jordan. He's been a massive influence on me, and he's very, very kind to me. But things like that, people tried to dissect exactly what was going on in the inner recesses of Jordan's mind when he said, "Sorry, not beautiful, and no amount of totalitarian overreach will convince me otherwise." Everything about that tweet, and almost everything really that the older guys on Twitter are putting out, can be understood if you remember that they're boomers. All that you need to do is just remember the fact that they're a bit, right? Filter it through. This isn't somebody who has a particularly additionally sophisticated Twitter habit or process that they go through before they construct a tweet. Our friends, some of our friends who are way, way less famous, George Mack, yourself, these guys craft tweets over weeks. It takes weeks and weeks to come up with these huge mega threads, and George will show me his notes and he's building them up over time and all this sort of stuff. I guarantee that Jordan took less than 3 minutes probably to type that tweet out. And yet it's then going to be indicative of his pathologization. Let's get the psychiatrists in to work out, is this something to do with his unrequited Jungian archetype from the, no. Like, it's just, he saw an image of a girl on Sports Illustrated that he didn't like, and he had a crack, and maybe he'd been gassy that day. Yeah, maybe he'd had a shit night's sleep because of builders next door. The frictionlessness facilitates this. And
I think it's the tweets that people don't think about very much that tend to be the ones that people talk about most.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if it's reasonable, if you've actually spent a long time thinking about it, then it's going to be reasonable. And if it's reasonable, it's not going to outrage people. It's not going to make people it's not going to stir up emotions in people, because it's going to be the antithesis of that. It's going to be something calm, measured, reasonable. But if you are just firing off what's the first thought that just instantly comes into your head, then it's by definition not going to be reasonable. It's going to be something that's impulsive, and that's going to make other people impulsive, and they're going to react to it in that same kind of language, as it were, the language of sort of the animal language of human nature, rather than the language of reason. And so I think that's one of the dangerous things about social media, is that it tends to favor ideas that people don't think very much about, people that just sort of are a product of human whim rather than human reason.
Every single morning for over 3 years now, I've started my day the exact same way, which is with Element in water. Element contains a science-backed electrolyte ratio of sodium, potassium, and magnesium, and it is the best hydration drink that I've ever found. It tastes fantastic. It's super refreshing. Orange is just the most OP flavor in the world. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it helps to play a critical role in reducing muscle cramps and fatigue. It regulates your appetite, it optimizes brain health, and it helps curb cravings. They're also the exclusive hydration partner to Team USA weightlifting and relied on by tons of Olympic athletes and everyday high performers all around the world. Also, there is a no BS, no questions asked refund policy where you can buy a box completely risk-free, and if you do not like it for any reason, they will give you a refund during an unlimited duration, and you don't even need to return the box. That's how confident they are that you'll love it. Element are giving away a free sample pack of all 8 flavors with your first box if you go to the link in the description box below, or drinklmnt.com/MW. That's drinklmnt.com/MW. What's happening, people? If you enjoyed that, then press here for the full, unedited episode. And don't forget to subscribe.